Everyone, it's Isabella again. I was wondering, have you ever had any times in your life when someone seemed to take a real disliking to you, even before you had any opportunity to do something offensive or irritating? Or perhaps you've had the experience of noticing that around a certain person, your behavior becomes totally different. Perhaps you become totally clumsy or become very talkative when you normally aren't? If your answer to these questions is yes, then you've had the experience of transference and projection. For this week's discussion, I'm going to briefly describe the concept of projective identification, include an example from one of my relationships in which I may be participating in projective identification, and figure out what need I have to own to slow down this cycle of projective identification. Before describing projective identification, I would like to describe its cousins, which are transference and projection, so you don't confuse them. Transference is an unconscious redirection of feelings of one person to another. It can happen in everyday life. It can occur in the therapeutic session, in the therapy room. One example of how this can happen is when someone mistrusts another. Because the other resembles, say, an ex-spouse in appearance or demeanor or mannerisms. In a therapeutic context, transference refers to the way in which the client's view of people or relations with people from childhood are expressed in current feelings, attitudes, behaviors in regard to the therapist. So analyzing this transference has generally been the central feature of psychodynamic techniques. Projection is also an unconscious process like transfer. It's considered to be a defense mechanism whereby intolerable feelings or thoughts are externalized and attributed to another or to others. By attributing to or projecting onto others one's unacceptable or unwanted thoughts or emotions, projection reduces the anxiety. So both negative emotions or impulses like lust, resentment, sadness, greed, and also the positive emotions are qualities like altruism, generosity, or creativity can be projected. What we deny within ourselves is termed our psychological shadow, which becomes the principal material for projection. Projective identification occurs when a person projects an unwanted or a horrible or intolerable aspect of him or herself, say, for example, deceptiveness, onto someone else, and then behaves towards the other in a way that generates feelings in the other which corresponds with the projection, and then unconsciously identifies and feels oneness with the other. Projective identification is unconscious and is more extreme than projection, and it serves a number of purposes for the person. Projection in such a way, the most important function is probably that of defense, avoiding painful feelings which have been denied. It also serves as communications, nonverbal, unconscious means of sharing. Instead of telling the therapist their inner world, the clients engage in a projective identification to get the therapist experience. In this way, they may be able to evoke empathy or understanding from the therapist. Third, through projective identification, clients secure a container outside of themselves that can hold and manage unwanted feelings. And fourth, it's a way of relating to another person, relationship being all important in psychotherapy. And finally, if the therapist is able to respond appropriately, projective identification can be a pathway to psychological change. And by appropriate, we mean that the therapist agrees to hold the material for the client for a while so that he or she can examine it as it appears in the therapist, and hopefully come to realize that it is safe to take it back and to own it. Some therapists have differentiated between projection and projective identification, noting that with projection, a person has more choice as to whether or not to accept the projection. Whereas in projective identification, there's a strong element of coercion, even though it's usually unconscious. An example of projective identification that I'm participating in right now in my relationship is the one with my husband, where my husband and I play this dance that learner calls dance, um, where both of us had assumed these polar roles of overly responsible and under responsible. I am the over responsible, always taking care of things, always on top of things. I've displayed this in behaviors like being overly solicitous, overly functioning, care the caretaker of the house, caretaker of everything, finances, vacations, decisions, important decisions. I make them, what furniture to buy, etc., what food to cook. And in terms of like household chores, I would do everything. All he has to do is, be a señorito and just be served. But I love doing it. It's not that he can't, but I love doing it because it makes me feel good, and I get things done fast, and I don't have to rely on him and wait for him to do it. What the drawback of this, though, is that it precludes him and discourages him from his own development, and that in that I am not. I'm engaging this behavior, and because of me engaging this behavior, he feels he's not needed, or he doesn't need to be competent, he doesn't need to function, doesn't need to be responsible, and so he just lays back and just not be under responsible. um what Why am I doing this? What my object relations therapist would probably ask me why I'm doing this, like perhaps I'm doing this because, and when I think about it, it's because my mom and father were always fighting, and I had to be the mediator between the two of them. I probably needed to grow up fast, that I learned in childhood that I had to learn to deny my own needs, to learn to deny that my need to be taken care of. And so I learned to just take care of things all the time, and that allowing, or that delegating things to somebody else would make me feel that I would be let down. So what I need to own to stop this, or to slow down this particular cycle of projective identification, is that I need to own that I need to be taken care of, and that I have that entitlement as well, and that I have to allow my husband to take care of things, so that he doesn't become under responsible, and that my need of being taken care of would be satisfied. Perhaps my husband has identified with this projection of mine because also of his need to be taken care of. When he was young, with both alcoholic parents, he probably had to grow up fast too, and then had also denied himself of being taken care of, in the sense that now his need of being taken care of is projected on me. You get it? So yeah, so both of us are actually satisfying this. We are maintaining this system, this need of this dance, because internally we both need it. So an object relations therapist would probably ask my husband questions like, maybe you are trying to get your wife to behave in a special way with you, a way you wished your parents had done when you were a child. And to me, is it possible that you have learned to deny your own needs and take care of others? So you need help from your husband in expressing that need to be taken care of. That's projective identification. So there you go. I hope I've made sense of projective identification, and I hope to hear feedback. Thank you.